while we're talking, but before we start our conversation with Martin, I just want to say on behalf of the Lake George Arts Project that I want to acknowledge that our programs and events, either in the old county courthouse building or in the adjacent Shepherd Park, take place on the ancestral homeland of several indigenous peoples, the Mohican and the Mohawk and others. And in recognition and respect of this history, we're committed to dismantling the ongoing legacies of colonialism and are supporting, empowering, and partnering with indigenous artists and communities. And also that this is a work in progress, and know that your feedback is welcome. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that. So welcome everybody. So glad you're here on this lovely May Day. Martin, your show is amazing. We have 28 works from Martin. We have a limited supply left of these catalogs, which are absolutely gorgeous. The show runs till June 3rd. Gallery hours Wednesday through Friday are 12 to 5 and Saturday 12 to 4. And there's lots of information on our website, lakegeorgearts.org. So you can find our contact there as well. So I met Martin 23 years ago. Can you believe it? We were in a group show together, and I recently reconnected with him, saw his work online, Instagram, started following him. And I'm so, Martin, you started working this way on acrylic sheets a while ago, like more than 20 years ago, probably, right? Yeah. But you've taken it to this level. The experience of your paintings, I mean, I call them paintings, but they're more than that. They're three in the show. We've got 3 layers. Each of them have 3 layers. Sometimes you have more and sometimes you have less, but it's different times of the day, different days of seasons, or different times, different years. He's capturing the landscapes. We've got portraits. We've got images of flowers, garden. Teresa your wife has a lovely garden. And I have to tell you people that you have to come and see the show because you have to experience it. It's really hard to know. Martin's done a great job photographing the work. I'm going to take this opportunity really quick. I'm in the gallery right now, or just outside of it. And I just want to give you a little quick sense of, see, they are in these plexiglass frames, but they're 3-dimensional. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to show you, I'm going to share my screen. I think I'll do that right now. And oh, here we go again. It's making me. Okay, good, I got it. So there's a couple of different series of works. Is everybody seeing that? You can just nod the roses now. Okay, good. There's a grouping of flowers. These are a little bit smaller, 11.5 by 14. And I don't know how much, oh, my mouse got away from me. Sorry about that. I'm not sure how much you can tell, but there's 3 layers of paintings in here. I'm going to go through some of these a little bit quickly just to give you a sense. And then on one wall, we have, these are much larger, or, they're large. And these follow the seasons. We've got winter, start over, winter, spring, as you can see. As we were talking at the opening, we had our reception last week, and we were talking about Martin is like this time of year in spring. His friends say, like, don't even try to plan anything with Martin because he's out there painting. And Martin, you were saying that you paint every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
For a long time. So this is what happens when you practice your craft. Is like Martin. I mean, it's just they're just amazing. Martin, do you want to maybe give us a little intro how you started with the 3 or with the layers? I mean, sometimes they're 3, sometimes they're more or less.
Um, well, I've always sort of thought in layers. This might be a good time to put up the image of the toy theater.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I was a child, my grandfather gave me a toy theater, and my father was an artist, so I was always drawing. But when I became like obsessed with like doing it all the time was to make sets for the toy theater,
Mm.
and so you can see it's all drops and wings and flats. And so I'd always thought in layers, but on a normal painting, I'd work in layers, and then you want to do something to the layer underneath, and you can't because there's paint on top of it. So I started painting on plexiglass in layers, and then it struck me that it was a very good way to deal with this dilemma that I had. I'd been an abstract painter because I read a lot of physics, and physics keeps telling us that everything we're seeing is kind of an illusion and kind of an accident of the fact that we have these organs that receive photons and turn them into messages about what the world is. And so I thought, well, painting abstractly is sort of more honest and more true. And then but I always, every time I traveled or went anywhere, I was always doing watercolors. I love the act of looking at something and the excitement of capturing it. So it seemed to me that this layering was a way of sort of dealing with reality that had, for me, more honesty to it, because I could deal with the fact that time is an illusion, and sort of also to show. So in the toy theater, I mean, one thing that I always love is that from the front you have this illusion, but then you look to the right, to the side, if you go around the side, the illusion collapses. And so these frames are kind of doing the same thing, where there's this illusion, but then if you move your head like this, or the illusion collapses or becomes more um, unstable. So yeah, it comes from this. My brain just thinks in layers. When I'm painting, I'm always conscious of, oh, I can put something over this, I can put something under it. I'll be painting something and I'll think, oh, I don't really like this red, but then I'm thinking, well, I can always put blue underneath it and shift it that way. And so it's a continual process.
I'm gonna pull this one up now, because this is
Yes.
a sample of the kind of layering.
So from the left to the right, it's the bottom layer, the middle layer, and the top layer. And we'll see this, a bigger image of this painting at some point, but the bottom layer is usually sort of an abstract thing, that influences the layers above it, but that is always the layer I do last, because the colors in that will change the whole meaning and the whole atmosphere of what goes on top. So the the two layers, the middle layer and the top layer, are plein air paintings. And I'm out there painting them, and that's pretty straightforward. It's the bottom layer that I do over and over again.
That is so interesting. That is not what I thought at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. The bottom
This-
layer, if that whole bottom layer was purple and red, this painting would be a completely different experience. Yes. So it's at that point that I'm sort of, as I'm doing the other layers, I work with just a dark, like black layer underneath. And for some paintings, that turns out to be the solution.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, yeah, that's the finished painting. So if you go back to the layering, you'll see that the other thing that happens is it can seem to people sometimes that it's a straightforward illusionist trick, like a theater where you're making perspective. But in fact, the close-up view of these hydrangeas is underneath the distant view of the landscape with the hydrangeas in it. So, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of like I don't know if you can see my mouse, but like these are blocked.
Yes,
So
semi-block.
semi-blocked.
And
Right.
again, if you're experiencing the person in real life, you can sort of peer into it and
Right.
see those things. But I do that a lot where the perspective is sort of reversed. There's a wonderful English physicist called Julian Barber who deals with the fact that in physics time doesn't exist, and he believes that there's a sort of construction, an actual physical aspect to reality that causes the illusion of time. And he uses as a metaphor for this, sort of snapshots that are stacked on top of each other. For me to express the unreliability of our experience of time, the best way for me to do it is sometimes to stack them in a way that seems counterintuitive.
Mhm. Yeah. Learning this about the layer all in the back as your last challenge in your painting. Oops. It also makes me think that that's the influence of the theater too, because it's like theater lighting. You're thinking about how light is traveling through these boxes that you have made. Um,
And of course, the wonderful thing that you can do in the theater, which is a scrim that's,
mhm.
you can light from the front and you see one image, and then you can light it from the back, and suddenly there's
Yeah.
a different,
It's just so, I mean, it's so, oh, I'm so sorry, my mouse is having a heyday here. But it's just so inventive the way you're working. When we were talking about, I'm just going to pull up, this one's called Lockdown Studio. We talked about this during the reception, and you were saying that you sometimes walk around the landscape and find different perspectives. And sometimes when you walk around, you walk back inside.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
In some ways, these paintings, which are inside and outside, which is, basically, this spring I've really been, that's what I've been mostly doing. It's, something sort of new and exciting. It has two elements. One is that, yes, if I step back far enough from something to do another layer, sometimes I could be inside. But I also think it's a sort of, there's a self-portrait in the show that sort of captures some of this too, that I'm very conscious of that our perceptions are all based on our being, inside this casing of, bone and flesh, and that, you know, I always think of myself as just eyes, but we're stuck in this thing, and sometimes I just want to make this thing disappear. And so that's what's sort of happening in this. And then I think those images of being inside and outside at the same time are kind of the same attempt to make the walls disappear. And so you're inside and outside at the same time, that the studio being sort of metaphor for the inside of my own head.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, all of you have a couple of interiors, and they're just, when you stand in front of them, it's hard to know where you are, which is kind of thrilling. I keep going back and forth and trying to find, am I inside, am I outside? We talked a little bit about this one during the reception. You were saying that the background in here, you can see the snow, like the sunlit, and there's actually a person here. But you had this back one, the back layer, you had that for a couple of years before you knew what to do with it.
It was actually the top layer that I had.
Oh, I had it wrong. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I did the top layer like 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then, it just sat there and there was, I have to say this was all during lockdown.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of artists I think had breakdowns, breakthroughs. A lot of us had breakdowns, but
A lot of people had breakdowns, still having breakdowns.
but I think a lot of artists had breakthroughs, and I think, for us introverts, it was a very good time. But yeah, and then it's very hard to see in the, but what's under this is a close up of the corner of where the windows meet on the top layer. Underneath it is simply a close up. Yeah,
Mhm.
that corner. Underneath it, you can see on the left, you can just see that that's a window, but those windows are sort of underneath the whole thing,
Yeah,
in close up. So again, the closer view is underneath the more distant.
right. Are these inside these white boxes or is that the garden boxes?
There, no, those are footstools. Yeah, these little puffy things we have.
Okay, they're inside, yeah. And this one is amazing. And in so many of your works, there's a little peek of the Hudson. You
Yeah,
live floating on Hudson, and you've got a view of the Hudson. So almost every piece in the show has you can see the Hudson in the distance.
yes, some of them like that view of the woods. It's only just a little glint off the river coming through the leaves, but yeah.
Yeah, and let me see, there's a couple, well, also in some of these,
Yeah, there it is.
there it is again. And Martin, the clouds, you really know how to paint weather. Oops, sorry, I'm sorry, my mouse is a little, this is where I want it to be. Um, Such drama on the Hudson.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love painting sky. It's,
yeah.
it's an adrenaline rush because everything's moving and it
I mean,
short circuits all the things in your brain saying you can't do this or whatever. You just, yeah.
just ignore it and just do it. And here's a winter. Look at that. I mean, there's the mighty Hudson. Such a beautiful painting. Oh my goodness. Mighty Hudson again. So, when I think of like the weather, and your interest in the natural forms, natural garden flowers, I was thinking of just today, Martin Johnson Head. Is that somebody that you think about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your very work is different. Your work is like nobody else. But and another person that came to mind was Charles Birchfield, because he would spend years on some paintings. Again, they're very different than yours, and they're on usually watercolor paper.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love his work. I follow on Instagram the Birchfield
Yeah,
Center.
Virtual Penny Museum. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and this is another thing. Just I love spending time with the work in the gallery. It's I see something different every time. I've also noticed your horizon, like you don't always have like a very clear horizon line because there's so many shifting perspectives. But like in this one, I feel there's an arc in this.
Yes. A lot of times the horizon is bent.
Yeah,
You'll see a lot of them, it's sloping one way or the other way, or
yeah.
I just, yeah,
Yeah, and the effect of that is kind of enveloping. Um,
and
to
also,
me. Yes,
again, destabilizing. So in this
it could be
one,
that too. Yeah.
in this one, the sort of top layer, which is this daytime view, you can see the horizon line is sloping from right to left, and
Mhm.
then right in the middle, coming through from underneath, is a twilight view with
Oh, I didn't even
that bit of the river sloping from left to right.
sneaky. Wow. I did not notice that before.
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
like that.
I always feel that a painting is theoretically something hopefully somebody will live with for a long time, and it wouldn't be I think it's a good thing if, like, year 3 of looking at it, they suddenly find out
Mhm.
that there's something they hadn't noticed.
Yeah, well, I think all of them I've been just, there seems to be something I see that I, I'm just going through my list here. I mean, this one is fascinating. Another one of those inside outside. And so you're dating them, the date that you end them, not necessarily how many years they.
Yes. Although this one was a few days, last, January, right around New Year's.
uh Too cold to go outside.
Oh, actually, the January before, what am I saying? 2022, yes.
Right. And then there's a group of portraits that we have. I think there's 6 of them. And there's like this really interesting, like psychologically, what's happening with the person in the landscape. There's a relationship, I believe, that that person has with the landscape you're depicting them in.
Yes. Yeah, so this is the Hudson River up near you.
Mhm. Fort
Um,
Edward.
Port Edward, yeah.
I know
Um,
that because I know who this person is.
yes. And, yeah, part of that is just, they're my friends. I've never painted somebody who wasn't, somebody I knew. Um, so, I feel like I have a handle, but, part of that is again the sheer frustration of thinking that I could catch anything about somebody with one view of them. Um, some of them have three, some of them, the ones that I picked for the show are only ones that have a strong landscape element in them. Some of them don't. Some of them, the face takes up the whole.
But the landscape is definitely, I mean, yeah, it's, oh, you're saying these have more of a landscape, right?
Yeah, I have some of these portraits that
Yeah.
the landscape is not there, or it's much small. By the time I was finished with the painting, the face takes up so much that you don't even see the landscape. Or so the ones I picked for this show were all ones where the landscape is very present.
Yeah. It's a beautiful painting.
Yep, again, our friend who's another gardener, in her garden, people in their places or places they love. This
And
is
this one, I mean, it takes it, like, I didn't see it right away, but here's like the whole, the head taking up most of the
yes,
picture. And
and the
then,
view. This is a friends we go to visit every year. Who he was a friend of my parents, and he's a sculptor. He's 80 something now, and he lives on the Yorkshire Lancashire border in the north of England. And yeah, people I love.
yeah, and this portrait of yourself, um, and here you are looking at the Hudson.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, sorry. Crazy mouse. Oh, and this is that's another big one.
So
And you said
this
you're in
is
this one too, right?
I am in there looking out the window.
Right here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, it's a sort of reverse. I've been doing some where the landscape is on top and then interior is underneath. So that's a sort of reversal of Lockdown Studio and those other two that you showed.
Okay.
It's something about windows. I feel like, that looking out of your own eyes feels sometimes, especially because I wear glasses, maybe, that it feels like I'm always looking out of windows or.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, glasses, windows, and you've made that happen in these paintings. Um, I think I showed that one already. I'm just gonna go through some of these. um, flowers. So these are big ones too. Daylilies. And
You know, the flower paintings are all very bound up in my wife, Teresa, who's a gardener. And, you know, before we were together, I didn't know one flower from another. And, you know, so there, you know, there is a portrait of her in the show, but there in some ways are portraits of her, I think. But I also, you know, I love painting flower. That's her. Yeah. I love painting flowers because they push me somewhere, often color wise, where I wouldn't have thought to go.
mhm.
I'm painting these, you know, red parrot tulips right now that, you know, are not a color scheme I could ever have come out with, you know, like sort of crimson and then tapering off to magenta with streaks of green and blue, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's great as a, painting the landscape to be able to get those red colors, red and purple, because it's always so green.
Yeah.
This is the time of year to grab it, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, and this is beautiful. Irises. Yeah.
That one is also a few years.
Uh-huh. Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, is there one that you can think of in the exhibition that took more time than the others, like over a number of years?
I
Like
would,
this, what
I
would be
would say that inside outside one that you showed with the snow underneath is probably in this show the one that has the longest.
yeah,
And I'm learning, you know, I've learned to just something's going on outside or whatever or inside, and I just paint it. Um, I don't have I don't have to have a plan. Um, maybe it'll be 8 years later that I'll know what to do with it, but
right.
they sit around you know, I have to remember remember what I have. I call it when I because I there's like 3 paintings this spring that I did that on layers from like 2 springs ago because last spring we weren't here. But you know, I finally, you know, made the other layers for them, and I call it spending my capital because I have these stacked up, you know, layers of a tree blooming or something. And
Yeah, at the reception, a friend of yours said that this is actually what your studio looks like. You've got paintings everywhere.
yeah, it's a bit of a mess.
So
Um,
prolific, though. I mean, but this, painting every day, and also it's just a great example of just taking a leap. I mean, you never really, know what you're going to use sometimes too, and that's just
or even in this, you know, and since this was during lockdown, it's called Lockdown Studio. So, you know, I'm painting and painting, not going anywhere. And the paintings are piling up in my studio and just doing them with, you know, even no thought that anybody was ever going to see them or that, you know,
yeah.
this was a time when we all thought, you know, maybe this is it. You know, we're never getting together again. Nobody's looking at real art again, you know.
I think a lot of people were, though. I mean, in the gallery, we had a lot of traffic during COVID, partly because a lot of places were closed, but people were buying artwork. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what's happening now because we're kind of transitioning again, but I, like you, I know a lot of artists. It was like, oh, you mean I don't have to go anywhere? I can work in my studio. It was a gift. I mean, not really. I mean, it was a terrible time,
Well,
but
it
it
was,
was, yeah.
yeah, that first spring I was painting and painting and it was beautiful, but I'm also listening to ambulances. It was a particularly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very strange. So I think I'm just looking at the clock, and we have go for like another 15 minutes. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and
There's one I think you should show
oh,
before. The one
what's-
that was in the, it's called Dogwoods and River.
oh my God, one of my favorites. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. How did
No,
I?
just because That's today here. Well,
Oh,
not quite as great a sky, but
mm,
and this one was, yes, a few days. So the other thing that tends to happen is because I'm painting the same thing over and over again. So the dogwood in the distance, the dogwood in the forward, they're all twice. So it looks like we have a lot more flowering trees than we do.
yeah.
This is right now when the dogwoods are still holding out, and that
Wow,
pink dogwood in the foreground is just opening up. So
this one right here.
this was exactly this time of year.
Yeah. But God, look at that sky. That is amazing. And again, you're kind of creating this, um, these tilts and
Yeah.
it feels like movement.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's just sort of
weather. Yeah,
these purple and blue lines on the bottom layer.
yeah. So I'm going to encourage people to look at Martin's website too. He's easy to find online, but he's got a lot of work in the show, and there's more work online, and um, yeah, a lot of beautiful stuff there. So I'm just gonna open the floor up and double check my chat. Okay, a little quiet in there, but that's okay. So we have Jen Dragon here, who's represented Martin in the past. Hi, Jen. How you
Hi,
doing?
hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I know you're a huge fan of Martin's work, like I am.
I
Um,
am, and I think it was thanks to Martin and a studio visit at Martin's studio that I saw the paintings he did in Venice. And that was the first time I think I'd seen all the landscape work and I'd curated landscape work, but these little Venetian paintings where I really came home to me, the layering idea and how it was almost like those paintings were the transition to the studio paintings from the pandemic, where you had such an obvious placement of the background in the foreground. But to see these happen with a landscape in Venice was just really, I don't know, it was very exciting. And therefore, through a series of happenstance, was able to bring Martin's Venetian paintings to Venice. So we'll be doing that again this year. And I have, but it's also like for me to just show these Hudson River views and these views of spring, and it is spring outside. It's really special.
yeah.
Um, I just think we have to get Martin to travel everywhere and do paintings of everything.
I bring my stuff with me wherever I go. And in fact, this idea of layering them with space in between came when I was traveling, visiting that friend in the north of England. I always paint there. And I just leaned the top layer against the paint box so that there was space. And in the same way that the paintings in the show, and I should explain that the layers are at angles to each other. They're not held in the box straight. And the plexiglass is slightly frosted. So the further away the layer underneath is from the layer above it, the more diffuse and it becomes. So the layer underneath goes from being more clear to more diffuse in both these sort of configurations. Um, it all sounds very complicated and kind of cerebral, but at this point with me, it's all just intuitive. It's, yeah.
Well, they
It,
are scientific in that I feel like you are analyzing, you know, this the mechanics of perception, but you also do it so extemporaneously because the brushwork is so gestural. I mean, it is so like masterful. You know, you say so much with just one mark. I once read somewhere that a good paintings, all the marks have a noun and a verb. And you feel that when you look at your work, you see like each mark is like, nothing's gratuitous. Nothing's just like, oh, I'm shading it now. I mean, it's just like, it's that wonderful sense of highlight of a tail to every brushwork. It's really, to me, the thing that I find really captivating is, and also the economy of the mark making. It's a little like that, Zen masters or Japanese, ink drawings, how you have this wonderful economy of mark making, except you have an awful lot of marks because it's very complicated what you're describing, but it's still, each one has that intensity. And it only comes from a lifetime of painting, I feel like, that you actually have that kind of command, that kind of like bravura, right? Bravura, that's the word.
I think, some of that though is also the thing of plein air of, you're painting outside. And I do this sort of, I tend to do this thing to myself where I'll put it off till the last minute, the light's changing and now I have to go out and paint. And I think I do that on purpose to I'll have to do it quickly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just wanted to share my screen again because I thought really well said, Jen. I mean, if you can see this better when you're right in front of this work, but like just talk about economy of like these lampshades and how just with a couple of strokes, it's so crystal clear, and the space, even though you're moving in, there's some because of the layers, but exactly, it comes from years of painting. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that again because that was an example of just how brilliant. I mean, but that is interesting that you go out late, so you have to hurry up. I love that.
Yeah. Yes, it's, the pressure of getting it down is just, like you can't mess around, yeah, you can't shade.
I think that's smart though. I think that, an artist, you have to um, give yourself some tricks to like get out of, your habits or make sure you challenge yourself and that you're not doing the same thing. So that's like one of those tricks. So you have to really be present and think about what you're doing.
I would have to say the flowers are an exception to that. Those are more like a sort of Zen,
Yeah.
where you're staring up close at something and trying to get every last, the sheen on the petals and I think that is maybe a different exercise.
Hmm.
Cool. So I'm going to just take a quick look at the chat. We're getting near our 45-minute mark. So last call for anybody who might have, I see a hand raised in the audience. Sam, 4M Sam, what would you like to ask Martin? You can unmute yourself, sorry.
Okay, I just unmuted. So I really love the fact that you think of yourself as a set of eyeballs, and then your self-portrait is a set of glasses. It really strikes home yourself. But I was really struck by the way you describe or you incorporate physics in your lexicon, because quite often artists kind of shy away from the sciences, really. And I was really struck by the way that you were interpreting perception and in your work, and mentioning interpretations and based on perceptions. And it really brought home the fact that this is something that scientists have been dealing with, well, since the beginning of time. And I'm reminded of Stephen Hawking and his book, A Brief History of Time,
Mhm.
where he talks about how hard it is to understand the universe because we live inside of it.
Yeah.
And we'll never reach the end. We can't look from the outside of the universe into the universe. And we can't understand time because we live within time, not from the outside of time. So we can't look from the outside in. And only mathematics is really the way that we can explore these things, which is terrifying to me because it's hard to understand mathematics too.
Yes.
So, in a sense, your work helps the average human like this one it helps the average human bring home those points. And I'm wondering, my question is, do you ever work with geeks?
Do I ever?
Do you ever collaborate with geeks?
It's funny, one of our best friends is a physicist, but he refuses to talk about it. He only wants to talk about art. Um,
He's a coward.
Well, I want to take exception to what you said, Sam. I think actually artists really are interested in the sciences.
I'm not saying they aren't interested. I'm saying
Yeah.
that they don't, devote their
No.
lives to it
well,
I
I
the
think
way
they-
scientists do.
Sorry. I
Well,
just think that their way of articulating it is sometimes, maybe sometimes limited because they aren't scientists. But I think that that's where a lot of art stems from too, I think.
I mean, I couldn't say I'm reading equations. I read, like A Brief History of Time, Julian Barber, science, books written by scientists for non-scientists. But I did feel when I got out of art school and I realized that I was moving away from abstraction towards realism, that I had a duty to try and find out what reality was if I was going to paint it.
Well done. I had one last question. Do you know Frank Owen and Frank Owen's work?
No.
Oh, Laura, we have something to do.
Yeah, Frank Owen's a painter he lives in Keene Valley, so it's up north of here a little bit. He's shown at Nancy Hoffman for a long time. And he had a show at the Arts Project about 4 years ago. But he's an abstract painter, but he works in layers. And I think you share something for sure. I didn't even make that connection, but.
And we live right between you and Frank. So,
So you can come visit.
I have
Yes,
to say
please.
that my heart still sort of lies with abstraction in some way. Whenever it's like, there's a show I have to go out and I have to see this, it's Gerhard Richter or Brenda Goodman or, I think it's partially that I just love paint. And, that's like an experience where the paint is everything. And
Well, I can feel it in your paintings. I mean, there's just, just really you get really lost in all three of those layers.
Yeah, I
amazing
just
what
wanted
you've
to add something.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
How the layering, of course, and the transparency that you start with, that then turns into a translucent. And, I've never seen anything like it as far as how it draws one into the landscape, into the flowers, with a different way of using light, because you're using the light in your color, of course, and the light that you affect, but actually the light in the room is part of what you see when you look at one of your pieces. So I just find that fascinating. When you mentioned being all eyes, there's a commercial on TV and I have no idea what it's for. So it's a really bad commercial, but the woman comes on and says, "I can't take my eyes off my eyes." And every time I hear that, I just see eyes looking into their own eyes and then seeing what their eyes are seeing. And so when I looked at your work, I thought, I can't take my eyes off my eyes. And I just think it's wonderful. And I really am grateful that I'll get to be working with this show for a few weeks. So thank you.
thank you.
It's great. Thanks, June. Well said. Well, thank you, everybody. Martin, thank you so much. It's just a fantastic exhibition. Your work is really amazing. And I encourage you, if you haven't seen the show yet, you got to see it because it's just amazing standing in front of the pieces. And you have until June 3rd to do that. What else? Oh, I wanted to also mention that we'll have this talk will be online. So if you want to share it with friends, we'll have a recording of this talk available probably by early next week. Martin, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. When people, we've
Thank
had
you,
a lot of
Laura and
success.
Jen, because the show I've never seen my work look better. I walked in the gallery and I was like, ooh, did
That's
I make
great.
it? Okay.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it really, the room is like, it's just transformed the room. So it's a great room, but it's like, it's a magical room now. It's really wonderful. And I'm just so happy to have your work in here. And it's just been great working with you. So thank you so much.
Likewise.
All right, so I'm gonna end this meeting now. Great to see everybody. Thanks for showing up and we'll see you in the gallery. Okay, bye-bye.